I was a bit skeptical when I was contacted by Sage and by Bodyswaps about this technology. I didn't really understand at first what it was trying to do. I didn't really understand how widely VR is going to be used, what VR could do. It seemed like a fringe technology. And I just didn't really see how it was going to change how I might teach these topics. But then I got into the module, right? I got a VR headset. I got in and I looked at one of the modules that Bodyswaps had built, I believe in the healthcare realm. And I looked at what they were doing and how they were simulating real life. And I immediately understood how we can use this in negotiation and conflict management. What we do as teachers of negotiation and conflict management, even as teachers of management more broadly, or leadership, or psychology, or dispute resolution, or whatever your topic might be, is we're teaching about relationships. We are teaching about the psychology of how people connect with one another. And that is very difficult to simulate and explain in a classroom setting. So we deconstruct it in various ways. We put people in different situations. We try to do the best that we can, but it's not a controlled environment. It can be anxiety inducing, and it can be difficult to capture sort of the realm of relationships in that really, that artificial setting. With VR, we can make it much more realistic by scripting out these scenarios, by scripting out these conversations between individuals. We can actually help the learners see in real time what is happening to a relationship, how value is being traded and gained and lost. What are the different tactics and behaviors that are being used? And once I saw that, even though the first one I saw was in a healthcare setting about how to help a patient, I immediately realized, well, that's kind of what we are doing too, right? We are actually diagnosing situations. We are trying to pick a tool from the toolbox. In the healthcare setting, you might be picking a tool, or you might be picking a medicine from your own toolbox. And we're trying to, improve that relationship in a way that brings us more value. Just like in the healthcare setting, they're trying to improve, the health outcome in order to help that patient. So it was immediately apparent to me why this is a technology we really need. And it's really exciting to be on the forefront of that. We're really trying to build skills from the beginning of these modules through the end. And in the first module, what we're trying to work on is really about how to start conversations. How do you build rapport? How do you engage in small talk? How do you lay the groundwork for a positive interaction, a positive relationship that is ultimately going to get you some of that relational value and ultimately tangible value that you want out of your negotiations. So module 1 may not even seem like a traditional negotiation, but it's so critical to managing conflict, to managing negotiations, because most of the negotiations we have in our lives are with people we know. That's why we start with the idea of the relationship, how to be sensitive to others in relationships, how to be sensitive to their needs, how to pick up on what they are saying. So we talk about active listening in that module, and we're really working on skills at sort of that formation of the relationship. We then layer on top of that, how do we think about negotiations? And this gets into the approach and mindset focus of module 2. And in this module, we take sort of the fundamental idea from the Sage textbook that we worked on, that more successful negotiations are characterized by understanding the other party versus trying to convince the other party. Convincing is the dominant mindset that most folks bring into a negotiation. They think that their task is to convince the other side that they're wrong, or that they should pay, your price, or whatever it might be. And really, if you're able to get rid of that mindset and take a more understanding approach, you're going to get more value out of that negotiation. So in module 2, we're really sort of setting the groundwork for that idea of shifting from a more convincing approach to a more understanding approach, and describing the value of taking that approach in negotiation. Then module 3, we layer on top of that deal making, right? So we have this mindset, we have this understanding of what is more productive, right? We have formed our relationship. We've taken a more productive mindset towards solving that conflict. How do we actually do it? So we get into more about adding issues, combining issues, expanding the pie, which might be very familiar to those who have taught negotiation or conflict management before. And we walk the students through activities designed to help them be more comfortable with identifying issues, managing issues, combining issues, and so forth. Working with the Body Swaps team was actually a lot of fun, very engaging, and to be honest, very intense. There's several layers to building these modules, but at the start of each module is the fundamental research and knowledge that we have about negotiation. We have to start there. So our initial conversations before anything is built is just about the learning objectives and what we want to convey in each module. That gets built into a rough outline that everybody reviews. That as a subject matter expert, I'm going through that outline with the Body Swaps team. We're making sure we have the right terminology. We make sure that we have the right learning objective, whatever it might be, in outline form. Those outlines are then turned into a script. And the script then includes the characters, it includes the exercises, it includes the roles, it includes the activities that the learner is going to do. We go through that script line by line to make sure that, again, the terminology is clear, the learning objectives are clear, that things are still based on the knowledge that we have about negotiation from the textbook that we worked on with Sage and other resources about negotiation, so that we are solid pedagogically as we fill out that script. Once we go through the script, actually multiple rounds of the script, we see it in video form with a robotic voice or a computer-generated voice. That really brings the script to life, and we start to see the graphics, we start to see how it's going to look like before the actors are hired, just so that we can see the flow of that. And I will say, even at this stage, there was quite a bit of rewriting that had to be done, even though we had gone through 4 or 5 rounds of outlining and script development. But once you see it in person, once you see the graphics, you see what still needs to be worked on, what still needs to be developed. And there were even times during development, even at that late stage, where I wasn't able to convey to the Body Swaps people what we were trying to convey, and I had to go and write the script or write a draft of the script. And that actually worked out great, because then I could put a draft together and they could edit it, and we could go back and forth a couple of times to really make sure that everything we were doing was consistent with what we wanted to convey in that module. Once we go through that process, in fact, we went through 2 different rounds of the computer-generated voice, then you start to see other things that need to be fixed, a graphic that needs to be fixed, a label that needs to be fixed, and so forth and so on. Once everybody is comfortable with that, then the actors are hired. We all gave feedback on the actors' voices to make sure the actors sounded professional, the voices were accurate, the accents were what we wanted for the different roles and characters, that we had that diverse set of characters that we envisioned for these modules. The actors were hired, they voiced the scripts, and then we got to see the completed product. But that's not the end. Even at that stage, there's still errors, there's still mistakes, there's still graphics that may not be working quite right. Labels still might need to be changed. It's a very interactive experience. So the learners are clicking on things as they're going throughout. And we had to go through and click through everything to make sure everything actually worked. And all of the text that were in those various boxes were what we wanted that text to be. So even at that stage, we're editing those menus, we're editing the graphics, we're editing the titles to make sure, again, that it's what we want to convey in those modules. I'm sure we didn't capture everything, but it was a very, very thorough process with, once you put this all together, 7 or 8 rounds with the subject matter expert and the Body Swaps team intimately involved at every step of the way. So I think there's a couple of obvious use cases that I will be definitely using and attempting to use in my class. The first one is easier than the second one. The first one is with my asynchronous negotiation class, which I teach almost every year. This is immediately going into my Blackboard site, into my course. I'm going to use modules 3 weeks in a row. And with that module, they'll have to watch the module or interact with the module, and they will have to comment in Blackboard on what that experience was like for them. And I will pair that with a reading from my textbook that emphasizes what they're doing, why they're doing. So they have the reading, they have the module, they have the reflection, and I think that will be a nice takeaway for them. I've also, because it's an asynchronous class, I've also recorded lectures. They're very short. They're between 5 and 10 minutes. Depending on the class, I might actually have a short lecture, and I will edit those lectures in order to incorporate the material from the VR simulation so that the students know what to expect. They know what to get out of the VR module, and it'll be a seamless experience across that week of that asynchronous course. The more difficult one, but one that I'm excited about, is that we as a school would buy a set of VR headsets, and we can use them in class, both in our degree programs, but also when we go out to do negotiation training for one of our exec ed or continuing ed clients. I think this is an amazing opportunity to really separate ourselves as an institution by saying, hey, not only are you going to participate in the traditional role play, which is what everybody has done, but we're actually going to give you the opportunity to do something that you've never done before, and something that really is challenging, it's insightful, it's personal, and then so we'll have individuals do maybe 2 of the modules or all 3 of the modules if we have enough time, if it's a day-long class or or a 2-day-long class. And then they'll come back to that classroom and we'll talk about what their personal feedback showed and what does that mean for their own negotiation. And then we'll pair that with an in-person role play to see if their behaviors change. We'll be able to track those behaviors and those outcomes to make sure their negotiation skills are improving.